Fall is here, and I'm so ready to start baking these seasonal treats and goodies. I hope you are too. First off, welcome to Cooking with Taste, and welcome to my brand new kitchen. I'm so excited to be here and to share these recipes with you. If you like warm sweet bread that's swirled around in cinnamon sugar and topped off with cream cheese frosting, then this is the right place for you. So let's get started. To make our cinnamon rolls, we'll start by measuring out half a cup or 100 grams of granulated sugar. If it's more convenient, I'll incorporate more metric measurements in this recipe. In a measuring cup, pour in about half a cup or 120 milliliters of whole milk and zap it in the microwave on high for 45 seconds. Once the milk is heated, check the temperature with your handy dandy thermometer. I'm looking for a temperature around 110 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take around 5 degrees. I want the milk to be warm to the touch, but not to the point where my yeast would die. If you do not have a thermometer, use your clean fingers to test the heat. Remember that half a cup of sugar from before? Remove about 2 teaspoons of that sugar from the measuring cup and transfer it to your warm milk. We are making an enriched dough, which means there's dairy, sugar, fat, and yeast involved. Speaking of yeast, add about 1 package or 21 grams of active dry yeast to your milk sugar mixture. Stir everything around and let the yeast bloom for about 12 minutes. Your yeast should look similar to this, foamy and fragrant. If there is no activity by now, then unfortunately your yeast is dead, and you would need to start the blooming process with fresh yeast. Moving on to our dried ingredients. Place your bowl onto a scale and turn out the bowl to 0. Measure out 420 grams or about 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour to start. Depending on the weather or moisture in the air, you might need more flour, but I'll decide on that later. To that bowl, pour in the rest of your granulated sugar and 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. Give everything a quick whisk and set the bowl aside. Back to my wet ingredients. Add in a half a cup of sour cream for a tangier dough flavor, or just another half a cup of milk or cream if you want a more subtle dough flavor. I tend to mix as I go, but you don't have to. Crack in about 2 large eggs, minus the shells, mix again, and pour in about 2 teaspoons of vanilla paste. Give everyone one last good whisk and set aside. In my stand mixer with the dough hook attachment, dump in all your dried ingredients and mix on low. Gradually pour in your wet ingredients in a steady motion. Remember, making art takes time, so don't rush this process. You do need to stop your stand mixer from time to time and scrape the sides and the bottom of your bowl. No ingredient left behind is the motto. Turn on your stand mixer and knead the dough for about 8 to 10 minutes. While the dough is kneading, incorporate about 6 tablespoons of softened, unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon at a time. I let my butter soften overnight, but if you're in a pinch, just zap your butter in the microwave for about a few seconds. By incorporating fat to your dough, it allows the dough to have a tender and moist texture. Without it, your dough will develop excessive gluten development, which means tough cinnamon rolls. Around the 6 to 7 minute mark, take a moment to check out your dough's texture. You might need to add a couple tablespoons of flour. Scrape the bowl again and continue mixing. Or not apparently. Well, this is embarrassing. Not the first time things went bust this year, but you know, story of my life. What in the ghetto is this? Now that that's done, let's get back to the action. Knead your dough for another minute, pause and check out your dough. My dough is a little too sticky, so I added about 2 or 3 tablespoons of flour and kneaded it until the dough was stable enough to work by hand. It's kind of hard to explain, but trial and error is allowed on my channel. At this point, I'm ready to transfer my kneaded dough to a greased bowl so it can rise in the fridge. Cover the bowl with some plastic wrap and place your dough in the fridge to cold rise for up to 24 hours, if you're that patient. Halfway through that rise, I realized that my bowl was too small, so I decided to transfer the dough back to my stand mixer bowl so it can finish cold rising in the fridge. While the dough is chilling, I'll move forward with my cinnamon sugar filling. To make the filling, you'll need about 6 tablespoons of softened unsalted butter, a half a cup of dark brown sugar plus a quarter cup of granulated sugar. Add in 2.5 tablespoons of cinnamon, just eyeball it, and don't forget some fresh nutmeg. Half a teaspoon will do. And yes, the fresh nutmeg makes a noticeable difference. Just try it. Go ahead and merge that butter, sugar, and spices until they become one. Making the filling is the second favorite part of this recipe. Number 1 being the cream cheese frosting, but that's coming up later. Right now, we're focused on making this harmonious spiced up filling. It is downright sinful, and of course, tasted. Okay, so my dough is chilled overnight, which makes the dough's flavor even more intense. Lightly coat your counter with flour as well as your rolling pin. I like to be a little extra with the dusting. Okay, back to business. Plop your dough onto the counter, swirl it around with flour on both sides, and go to town with the rolling pin. Rotate the dough from time to time, just so nothing is sticking. And I like to square off the corners, like so. Once you roll out your dough to about 1/8 of an inch, then plop your cinnamon sugar paste on top of that dough and spread it close to the edge. With your itty bitty fingers, roll your roll tightly until you make a log, like so. This process is a bit therapeutic. The dough is so plush and the smell is to die for. Once you made your cinnamon roll log, trim off the edges with a serrated knife. You can continue to use a serrated knife to portion out your cinnamon rolls, but I have a trick up my sleeve: dental floss. Just get the dental floss under the dough until you reach the halfway mark. Watch this. Bloop. Perfect cut every time. Continue this step until all your cinnamon rolls are evenly cut. Pick a baking dish. It could be glass, ceramic, or whatever, but just grease the bottom. Place your little buns onto the baking dish. Admire the beauty. Cover and let the buns rise for 40 minutes in a warm place, or cold rise for up to 4 hours. Okay, I'm back. So I opted in for the additional cold rise, which just maximizes the bun's flavor and allows the cinnamon sugar to adhere to the dough. It's just like the Pillsbury cinnamon rolls, but much, much better. You can also put your raw cinnamon rolls in an airtight bag and freeze them if you want homemade buns in a flash. Go ahead and set your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. And while your cinnamon rolls are rising in the corner, let's work on that cream cheese frosting. For this, you'll need 6 ounces of Philadelphia cream cheese. You can do this step by hand. Make sure that your ingredients are at room temperature or you're going to have a dysfunctional frosting. Add in about 6 tablespoons or just a whole stick of unsalted butter. Blend those 2 ingredients together until they become one. As Ina would say, always use good vanilla. And today I'm using vanilla paste. And add a couple pinches of kosher salt for balance. Mix everything again for a few seconds and sift in about 2 cups of confectioner sugar. Always sift your powdered sugar. They are notoriously lumpy and I hate lumpy frosting. Add your confectioner sugar in batches so that you can control the overall texture. These steps never fail. You can also eyeball the sugar. Keep in mind, this is your frosting, so you can make up your own rules. Give everything a quick whisk and taste for flavor and texture. In my case, I wanted a thinner frosting. It's like thick with 1 seed versus thick with 6 seeds, if that makes sense. Just cut the frosting with some milk or cream and give everything one last whisk. And that's how I make my cream cheese frosting. Give it one last taste. By now, your cinnamon rolls should have risen. Remove the plastic wrap and put your buns in the oven for about 30 minutes. Rotate your buns halfway, if needed. Okay, my cinnamon rolls are ready. My apartment smells like butter and spices. Look at this masterpiece. I say masterpiece because I spent about 2 days making this. But you know, I'm a bit extra like that. Anyway, let these rolls cool for about 5 minutes before frosting them. And yes, your buns will still be hot. The time has come. Plop that devilish frosting on top of your cinnamon rolls, like so, and spread it from coast to coast. By letting your buns cool for a few minutes, all that frosting won't melt to the bottom. You're allowed a bit more control of the situation. Thank me later. Make sure to get down to the creases and the crevices. Treat these buns like your spouse on your honeymoon. Some people like the edges. For me, I like the centerpiece. It's just my preference. Just get a close look at this. I'm gagging. This is Cinnabon on steroids. You just cannot beat this. Basically, just make this. This cinnamon roll recipe is amazing. The rolls are soft, rich, and have the perfect amount of chew. Plus, this cream cheese frosting is addictive. If you like my recipe, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I look forward to sharing more recipes with you soon. Ciao!